It was just another quiet morning, the kind where everything feels almost too perfect. The sun was coming up, soft and warm, just how I liked it. I could hear the usual morning sounds: birds singing, sprinklers ticking, a couple of cars in the distance. I grabbed my coffee, slid open the back door, and stepped out to enjoy the view of my backyard. But something felt off. It didn't hit me right away. It was more like a slow wave of, "Wait a second," washing over me. That calming splash of water I was used to hearing? Gone. I looked over at the pool and froze. It was completely empty. No water. Not a single drop. Just a dry, cracked bottom where there should have been clear blue water catching the morning light. I blinked a few times, hoping it was just the sunlight playing tricks on me. It wasn't. My first thought was maybe a leak. Something broke overnight. Maybe the pump blew out. But that didn't make sense. There would have been a mess. Flooding, something. This was clean. Too clean. I felt this weird twist in my stomach, a mix of confusion and dread. I stepped closer, trying to figure it out, and that's when I heard it. The sound of footsteps. Slow, deliberate. I turned around, and there she was. Karen, the head of the HOA, standing on the edge of my lawn with her arms crossed and this smug little smile on her face, like she'd just done something she was proud of. And in that moment, everything clicked. It wasn't a leak. This wasn't an accident. Someone had drained my pool on purpose. And from the way Karen was standing there, almost like she was waiting for me to notice, I knew exactly who was behind it. She didn't say a word at first, just kept smiling like this was some kind of victory. And all I could think was, what the hell did she just do? Karen didn't waste any time. The second she saw me looking at the empty pool, she stepped forward like she'd been rehearsing this moment. I didn't even get a full sentence out before she raised her hand, cut me off, and started talking like I was a kid who'd broken a rule. She said something about community water usage and how we're all doing our part during this drought. Her voice had that tone, you know the one, sweet on the surface but packed with judgment underneath. She pulled out a folded paper from her tote bag like it was some grand reveal. "We sent you a notice," she said, shaking it in my face. I looked at it, and sure enough, it was dated over 2 weeks ago. I never got it. No email, no knock on the door. Nothing. But she didn't care. In her eyes, I'd already been tried and found guilty. "You've been overusing water for non-essential purposes," she said, like she was quoting from a rule book she probably helped write. Pools are not a priority during emergency conservation. Then came the list. First a fine, then a threat about legal escalation, and something about lien rights if I didn't comply with the guidelines. She even mentioned how some neighbors were concerned, and that the HOA was just acting in the interest of the entire community. I was still trying to wrap my head around the fact that my pool had been drained without my knowledge, and here she was, acting like she deserved a medal for it. She wasn't just explaining things, she was enjoying it. Every pause, every glance, every smug smirk. She loved having power, and this was her moment to swing it around. It wasn't just about water, it was about control. She wanted me to feel small, she wanted me to apologize, and worst of all, she thought she could get away with it because she had a badge and a title that said Homeowners Association President. I stood there, not saying much, just watching her talk. I could feel the anger rising, but I kept my mouth shut. Let her dig her hole. Let her gloat. Because behind all her little rules and fine print, she had no idea that she'd just messed with the wrong person. I tried to speak up. I really did. I told Karen I never got the notice. I said if they had just talked to me first, we could have figured something out. But she wasn't listening. She didn't care. She cut me off again with that same fake smile voice, and started repeating rules like she was reading off a script. Every time I asked a question or pushed back, she just pointed to the paper and shrugged, like that made it law. Then she pulled out the real threat. She said if I didn't accept the fine and acknowledge the violation, the HOA had the right to issue more penalties. If I ignored those, legal action, court, property liens, all that. She dropped those words like they were no big deal, just another Tuesday for her. But I could tell she was getting a kick out of watching me stand there, caught off guard and pissed with nowhere to go. A few days later, things got worse. I checked the HOA newsletter. They'd sent out a notice about a serious water misuse incident in the neighborhood. No names, but it was obvious who they were talking about. My house, my pool. Please be mindful of others during this dry season, it said. Subtle enough to sound polite, but clear enough to turn heads. And sure enough, people started looking. The neighbor across the street stopped waving. A guy walking his dog slowed down and stared at my yard a little too long. Karen had set the stage perfectly. In her mind, she'd just scored a win. She had the rules, the power, and now the neighborhood on her side. Meanwhile, I looked like the selfish guy wasting water while everyone else was cutting back. She thought she had me cornered, thought I'd roll over and pay the fine. But here's the thing. Karen didn't know everything. She thought she was the one with all the power. She had no idea what she'd just started. I didn't fight back right away. I let Karen talk. I let her have her little moment in the sun, waving papers around like they gave her some kind of superpower. But deep down, I already knew something she didn't. Something no one in this neighborhood knew. Because no one ever asked. See, this land wasn't always a neighborhood full of cookie-cutter houses and barking HOA rules. Way back, before the sidewalks, before the mailboxes, this whole area used to be farmland. My family's farmland. My grandfather owned most of it. They sold off the land bit by bit over the years, and developers came in and built what's here now. But here's the thing. When they sold the land, they kept the water rights. That's a small line in a big stack of legal papers most people never bother to read. But it means everything. It means that while the HOA owns the streets, the signs, and the rules, my family still legally controls the water that runs beneath this neighborhood. I'm talking about the groundwater. The real source. For years, it didn't matter. No one thought twice about it. Everyone had water, the city handled billing, and we had no reason to ever bring it up. But after Karen drained my pool and threatened to drag me to court over water use, that's when I remembered. I went up to the attic, pulled out an old metal box, and there it was. Original paperwork from the land deal. Signatures, seals, the whole thing. My name was on the current deed as the inheritor of the rights. It hit me like a switch flipping. She wanted to play the control game? Fine. But I was holding the one thing she had no clue about. The very thing she was trying to punish me over, I controlled it. I wasn't angry anymore. I was calm, focused. This wasn't about revenge. This was about setting things right. I didn't need to yell or slam doors. All I had to do was make one quiet phone call, and everything would start shifting in my direction. I made the call the next morning. No yelling, no drama, just a quiet conversation with someone at the water authority who actually knew what water rights meant. I told them I wanted to exercise my legal control over the groundwater beneath my property and the surrounding lots. It wasn't anything flashy. No one was going to show up in a truck or wave around forms. Just a few signatures, a copy of the deed, and a request to reroute usage to my private line. The guy on the phone paused when he saw the documents. "You sure about this?" he asked. I told him I was. Completely. From there, things moved faster than I expected. Within a few days, adjustments were made. Nothing public, nothing loud. But little things started to change. The water pressure in the neighborhood dropped. Not all at once, just slowly enough that people didn't notice right away. I'd walk past homes and see sprinklers that used to spray high now sputtering a bit. Garden hoses didn't have that same strong flow. Even the fancy little fountain in front of Karen's yard. It started hiccuping, then dribbling. I passed by one morning and saw her standing there with her phone, staring at it like it had betrayed her. And that's when I knew. It had started. I didn't say a word to anyone. I just went about my day, kept my lawn trimmed, and refilled my pool like nothing ever happened. While everyone else was asking each other what was going on, I kept quiet. The HOA sent out some vague notice about temporary maintenance issues and asked for patience. They had no clue what had changed. This wasn't about cutting anyone off completely. Not yet. It was about letting Karen and her little army feel it. Just enough discomfort to make them start looking for answers. Just enough of a shift to make them wonder who was really in control. And me? I was just getting started. It didn't take long for things to spiral. A week in, and everything started falling apart. Sprinklers just stopped. Not slowed. Stopped. Lawns that used to be perfectly green started turning yellow, then brown. People tried to refill their pools and got barely a trickle. Gardeners were standing around with dry hoses and confused looks on their faces. Nobody knew what was going on, and the HOA had no answers. Karen tried to act like everything was fine. She sent out another newsletter filled with half-truths and weak excuses. Temporary maintenance issues, she wrote again. Please reduce non-essential water use. But this time, nobody was buying it. You can't tell people to relax when their $1,000 landscaping is frying under the sun and their pools are cracking from the heat. Then came the meetings. People were mad, and not just annoyed, they were shouting. One guy stood up and demanded to know why his water bill was higher, even though his sprinklers hadn't worked in days. Another woman screamed that her garden was dead and she wanted compensation. Karen tried to calm everyone down, but she looked like she was about to snap. Her voice cracked, and she kept glancing at the board like someone was going to jump in and save her. No one did. I watched from the back of the room, arms crossed, saying nothing. She didn't see me at first, but when our eyes met, I smiled, just a little, and she froze. I didn't need to say a word. She knew. Somewhere in that moment, it clicked for her. The rules didn't matter anymore. Her papers and threats didn't mean anything. I'd flipped the switch, and she was completely in the dark. The best part? I didn't lift a finger beyond that one phone call. No shouting, no threats, no revenge speech. Just silence. And now, the empire she worked so hard to control was crumbling around her while I sat back and watched it fall. She showed up on my doorstep like a storm. No warning, no politeness, just rage. Her hair was a mess, her sunglasses crooked, and she didn't even knock, just stomped up and started yelling. "You did this!" she shouted, pointing at me like I was some criminal. "Don't play dumb! I know it's you!" I didn't flinch. I didn't even raise my voice. I just looked her in the eye and said, "You drained my pool. I drained your kingdom." That shut her up for a second, just long enough for me to grab the folder I'd already set aside. I handed it to her. Copies of the water rights deed, signed, notarized, perfectly legal. She stared at the papers like they were in another language. "You're bluffing," she snapped, her voice shaking. "You can't just shut off our water. We have rights." I cut her off, calm as ever. "You had access, not rights. That access came from my family's land, and now it doesn't." She tried to argue, but the fight was already gone. Her words didn't land the same way they used to. Her threats felt empty now, like someone swinging in the dark. Behind her, I noticed two other HOA board members standing awkwardly on the sidewalk. They weren't saying anything, just watching. probably realizing for the first time that all the power they thought they had was built on sand. Karen looked down at the papers one more time, but there was nothing left to say. She couldn't stop it. Couldn't undo it. I didn't gloat. I didn't yell. I just stepped back inside and closed the door gently behind me, let her sit with it, let her feel what it's like when the rules finally flip. The next few weeks were a slow-motion collapse. The HOA tried to hold emergency meetings, but no one was listening to them anymore. People were fed up. Lawn damage, dead gardens, half-filled pools. Every meeting turned into shouting matches, and the question on everyone's mind was simple. Who let this happen? All eyes turned to Karen. She tried to keep control at first, waving around her rulebook like it still meant something. But when people asked why she didn't know about the water rights, why she picked a fight without understanding the full picture, she had no answers, just excuses, and people were done with that. One by one, board members started stepping down. They didn't want to be tied to the mess. The threat of legal action faded when their lawyer confirmed the water rights were real. And airtight. There was nothing they could do. No court was going to force me to give up something my family legally owned for decades. They tried to play hardball and ended up folding like paper. Eventually, the HOA stopped sending notices, stopped trying to fine anyone. Their power was gone. Karen disappeared from the neighborhood chat. Some said she resigned, others said she just stopped showing up. Either way, no one missed her. And me? I refilled my pool the second the papers were approved, sat outside with a cold drink, sunglasses on, just listening to the sound of clean, clear water. No drama. No threats. Just peace. The fountain in Karen's yard stayed dry the whole time. I could have turned it back on. I had enough access to do that. But I didn't. I made sure to leave the fountain off. Just for the vibe. Looking back now, it's kind of funny. They wanted to control water, like they were in charge of what flowed and where, but I was the water. I moved how I wanted, went where I needed, and I didn't ask for permission. The more they tried to block me, the more I found new paths. It wasn't about winning some neighborhood war. It was about not letting people push me around in my own home. These days, the neighbors wave more. They keep their comments to themselves. Some even ask me for advice, which still catches me off guard. I don't hold any real grudges. I just kept the receipts. Every letter, every complaint, I kept them. Not to get even, but to remember. Because sometimes, keeping the receipts is better than getting even. It lets you know what you're dealing with. Now, I sit in the backyard where it all started. The grass is green again. The little water feature I installed hums softly. It's quiet, finally. The kind of quiet that makes you breathe deeper. I don't need to prove anything anymore. I already did. And just when I thought they'd learned, another letter arrived.